okay in the back of the room? Is it all right? Max, can you hear me? Good, okay, good. Before I forget about it, I brought a basket of Bitcoins here and I'm going to leave it in the back. It's a party favor. Please take one as you leave it. Let me start with a quick survey. How many of you have never heard of Bitcoin? That doesn't surprise me. We've all heard about it. We've just heard about it in the last 15 years. It started out of nowhere. Nobody ever heard about it before. All of a sudden, this thing comes along, and if you just knew what to do, you can get rich quick real fast. And some people maybe did. And all of a sudden, it gets hyped up to a huge amount, and you end up with something like that. And then, just recently, it gets caught up in the political world. So now it's all wrapped up in that. And by the way, let me say up front that I'm going to try my very best to keep that aspect out of this talk tonight. And we get to the question and answer period, I'm going to ask you to do the same. So no politics. Tonight, we're going to talk about cryptocurrency and the fascinating story of Bitcoin. We're going to talk about what is it, how does it work, what's it good for, and maybe if it's here to stay or not. Cryptocurrency is digital money. It works through a whole bunch of computers. It doesn't involve a government, and it doesn't involve a bank. It's not like cash and everything else we've ever been familiar with. It's not a physical asset. There are no coins. You can't fill up a basket with them. There's no gold associated with it, no silver, no stocks, no bonds, nothing like that. And so you can think about it like this girl is here. It's just an imaginary coin. It's computer money in the sky somewhere. And it's based on technology that's called blockchain. And the guy that created Bitcoin, nobody knows who he really is. There is I said guy, I don't even know about that. There is an individual who created Bitcoin 15 years ago. He is anonymous. He goes by the name Satoshi Nakamoto, but we don't know if that's accurate or not. But he had this vision when he created it, and he says, I'm going to make an electronic system just like cash, only it's electronic for regular transactions. You can buy and sell things with this thing that I'm going to work. It works from me to you directly. If I'm going to give you money directly, it's open. Everybody can see what's going on. There's no government involved. There's no bank involved. That's what he set out to do, and he actually did it. And this is a true story. In May, 15 years ago, there was the first official transaction of Bitcoin. There was a guy that mined some early on. He had some Bitcoins, and he gave 10,000 of them for 2 pizzas 15 years ago. Those Bitcoins, had he kept them, would be worth $1 billion today. But he bought 2 pizzas with them. So here is this blockchain. And there's the person who claims to have invented them. And this is the official definition of what a Bitcoin is. It's a decentralized database. A database is just a lot of information that's around on computers, not in one big central computer, spread all over. The crypto nerds call it the distributed digital ledger. What it does is it stores records of transactions across all these computers, and those records of transactions are called blocks. And you can see everything that goes on with these transactions. You know how much money I gave you. It's there for everybody to see. It cannot be changed, and it's really difficult to hack. You can't tamper with it very well at all. And each block of information contains what they call a digital fingerprint. And that shows you what the previous block was, and it tells you when this transaction happened, and it gives you how much money I'm going to pay you. It gives you the data, and that's called a cryptographic hash. By the hold your questions, please. Well, there's a million rabbit trails, and if we get started, I'll never be able to finish. So I'm going to ask you, please hold your questions till the end, your comments. So if you really want to impress your grandkids, tell them you learned what a cryptographic hash is. Here's how blockchain works. First of all, you request a transaction. I want to pay Bob Jenkins $100. That's the transaction that I want to make using Bitcoin. And so a block is created that represents what I want to do and when I want to do it. And it goes out into a bunch of computers all over the place. And somebody out there figures out that that is a valid transaction. I'm going to tell you more about that in a little bit. But the transaction gets validated, and once that happens, the person that validated it gets a reward for doing so, and then that block is official, and it gets attached to the last one, and my $100 has gone to Bob's, and that transaction is over with. So that's how blockchain works. Now here's how you create a transaction. The first thing you have to do is get what's called a digital wallet. That's a billfold in the sky that a computer knows about somewhere. They're easy to get. You can get them online. They're free. I don't have one, but apparently it's easy to do. And when you get one, you get 2 keys that go with that wallet. One of them is called a public key, and that gives all of the information about how many dollars I'm going to send to Bob, what my wallet's name is, what his wallet's name is, when it's going to happen. Those are all public keys. And then you get a private key, which only you know, and that is very important because you have to use that to do anything with your Bitcoins, to be able to spend them or cash them in or whatever. You have to have your private key. So you get 2 keys when you get a digital wallet. So the sender initiates a transaction. Let's say again, I'm going to give that $100 to Bob. I have to have a digital wallet, and so does he. Our wallets have names, and everybody can see our wallet. They can see how much is in it. They know the name of our wallet, but they don't know who I am, and they don't know who Bob is. They just know whatever the wallet's name is. And so all that is public information. And also, when I want to send Bob that $100, I have to give a little bit more to entice somebody to validate the transaction. So I'll add $1 to that $100, and that's the reward for whomever it is that validates the transaction. And it's really a key. The individuals, the people behind this are anonymous, but everything else, everybody can see. And so what happens is the sender, that's me, I use my private key, which I've kept very careful. I use my private key to authorize that transaction, and the money goes straight into Bob's wallet. And so the transaction is complete. Now, once you have this draft transaction, it has to be validated. And so what they do is they send this block of information out to these maybe 1 billion people now have special computers that can do that. So it goes out into this network, and the first thing it goes into is a waiting room. Think of it just like sitting in your doctor's office. So your transaction that you want to get authorized is you going into the waiting room, and you're sitting there waiting for the doctor to say, okay, it's your turn. That waiting room in the computer is called a mem pool. So there's another little term you can use with your grandkids. Now what happens is that people who are called miners are the ones who will validate that transaction. And there's 1 million of them, and they're easy to become a miner. All you have to do is have a pretty specialized computer and you can download free software, and you have to have a Bitcoin wallet. But if you do any of those three things, which are, again, easy to do, you can be a computer miner. So if you are one of those, what you do is you say, okay, I see that transaction in the waiting room, the mempool, that Woodrick wants to give to Jenkins. And so I say, I'll be the miner. I said, I'll take that transaction and I will validate it, and I'll see how I do that. And that's kind of the next step. And so here's what mining is all about. This is Bitcoin mining, and the thing that you have to recognize is a miner is really not a human. A miner is a computer. The human kind of sets it up, but the mining is actually done by a computer. And the technical term that they use for that is called proof of work. And so what happens is, again, the miner selects a transaction from this waiting room, this mempool. So I have selected Woodrick's transaction to Jenkins, and then me, the miner now, has to solve a really difficult mathematical problem in order to approve the transaction. And when I do solve that problem, then I get a correct solution, and that forms a new block, and the new block is sent to everybody else, and they attach it to their blockchain, and the transaction is completed, and me, the miner in this case, gets that dollar that Woodrick added to the 100 as a reward for validating the transaction. I also get some Bitcoins for doing that. I'm going to show you more about that in a minute. So here is miners' rewards. This is just over here. This is just the price of Bitcoin from, I guess that's when it started. It came up, but it's now just around $100,000 of Bitcoin. And this down here on the bottom, that yellow bar over here is the percentage of the reward that a miner gets that is represented by that dollar that I gave. And the rest of his reward is represented by the number of Bitcoins that he gets because he solved it. And so right now, that number is nearly zero. So when you solve a block today as a miner, you get that dollar that Woodrick gave, but you get a whole lot more in terms of Bitcoins. And this is an important concept about this that makes people think this thing is going to go on forever. It's called Bitcoin halving. And you need to realize that the only way you can get a new Bitcoin is by mining. You have to solve one of these transactions, and that creates new Bitcoins. That's the only way they can do that. When this thing got started back in 2008, if you were a successful miner in 2008, you got 50 Bitcoins for making that successful authorization of a block. That amount gets cut in half every 4 years. And so it's down to 3.25 today. Today, if you solve a block of transactions, you get that dollar that I mentioned earlier, but much more importantly, you get 3.25 brand new Bitcoins. And that's worth $300 and something thousand today. And every 4th year it halves. And then it halves again, and so that just keeps going. Now, stealing a Bitcoin is pretty hard. Here's an example of some bad guys that are going to try to hack into somebody's computer and steal his Bitcoins. So here's the cartoon. So a crypto nerd, this is his imagination. The first nerd says his laptop is encrypted. Let's build $1 million cluster to crack it. The other crypto nerd says, no good. It's 4096-bit PSA. And the first nerd says, blast, or evil plan is foiled. And so he is unable to hack the guy's computer and steal his Bitcoins. But there's another way to do it. And that's called wrench attacks. So here's our crypto nerds again. What actually would happen. The first guy says his laptop's encrypted. Drug him and hit it with a $5 wrench until he tells us the password. The other nerd says, got it. And this actually is happening. I don't know if they use a $5 wrench or not, but they get violent with an individual who owns Bitcoin, and they threaten him with something pretty bad, and the individual gives up the password and loses his Bitcoin. So Bitcoins can be stolen, but it's not normally by somebody hacking into a computer and taking it. It's usually by something like this. So here's something that I found pretty interesting. So what are these difficult math problems that these Bitcoiners solve? Well, it's all based on a computer program that the United States National Security Agent created. So they developed this computer program. It's got a name. It's called SHA-256. And so that computer program, when you give it the information about a block that you want to try to solve, it assigns that information and some other stuff to that proposed block, and it creates a random number. In this case, a 32-bit binary number. It creates that number, and they call it a nonce. That stands for number used only once. Nonce. And there's an example. You know, a binary number is just a bunch of zeros and ones. But when you string them out like that, you can convert it to a number that we're all familiar with. So that particular 32-bit binary nonce is equal to 2,147,000,000 and so forth. And you can get any combination of this you want, and you get a different number over here. So what the miner, it's a pure guessing game. There's no skill involved whatsoever. The miner tells his computer, start guessing as many nonces as you can guess, plug them into that SHA-256 computer program. It gives you back another number. In this case, it's a 64 combination of numbers and letters. And it looks like that. And that's what you get back when you put that nonce in that 256. And you have to get the right number in order to solve it. And you have no idea what it is, but it does. And so you just keep guessing maybe 1 trillion times. And finally, if you're lucky, this thing is going to come back and it's going to be close enough to the right answer. And that computer knows how close enough is. And so when you get close enough, it says, bingo, you win. You are now the successful person who solved the block. And so you get the money, you get the reward, and it goes out to everybody else, and it's completed. And so my $100 goes to Bob, and the guy that's solved that problem gets $1, and he gets 3 1/4 Bitcoins. And that adds up to something over $300,000, and he's happy as a clam. And the criteria for success in solving this equation gets tougher and tougher as the number of people who are trying to get it grows. So when the number of miners gets to be more and more as people buy their little laptop and try to solve it, then it gets harder and harder to find the right number like that. But the important thing to remember is it's just a random guessing game with a whole lot of random guesses. And finally, if you're lucky, you can get it. So that's the math problem that miners solve. Now, cryptocurrency does have some advantages. It's quick, it's low cost, it's straightforward transactions. You can do it with your cell phone. From mine to Bob's cell phone, that's all we need. No banks, no government involved. It eliminates those. You don't need Venmo, you don't need PayPal. You just go from my digital wallet to his, just like that. All you have to remember is your private key to make it work. And once that transaction is done, it gets, again, recorded on that blockchain that everybody's got a copy of. And anybody in the world can look in and see that transaction. They know that my wallet gave his wallet $100 on March the 31st. So that information is available for everybody to see. Now, again, the individual people behind those wallets are anonymous. Some people make the case that that's good. We all like privacy and all that, so maybe it's good. Other people make the case that that's really bad, because being anonymous, you can do some bad things that most people wouldn't want you to do. So that's a good or bad, take your choice as to whether being anonymous is good, but you are anonymous. Now, there's lots of disadvantages of Bitcoin. The price is really volatile. It goes up and down. It doesn't always go up. Sometimes it goes down and you never know when or how or what. So it's very volatile, and that fact alone makes it unlikely that it can ever be used for what Satoshi wanted it for in the first place, which was just regular transactions. Its value is just too volatile for that. There'll be other things in a minute that might work, but Bitcoin will probably never be used just for routine transactions. It's too volatile. It's also used to conduct illegal activity. You can buy and sell drugs with it, illegal drugs. You can launder money. You can do all kinds of bad things because of the anonymous nature of that thing. It's uncertain from a regulation standpoint. We don't yet have good regulations for how to control that. Governments don't particularly like it because they lose control of their money. You're just taking the government and the bank out of it, and it's just between my phone and Bob's. That's all that's involved. And it's vulnerable to scams. There's plenty of scams that you can do with this. It's hard to do it fast, so there's a scalability issue. You might not be able to really have a bunch of them happen at the same time. And the other really important thing to know about this is there is no protection for loss. You can't insure against loss. If you lose your private key, it's gone. There's no recovery for it. And so you gotta really watch your private key. And the other big disadvantage is that these mining operations that have to solve that tough mathematical problem, they use a lot of electricity. And that is increasingly becoming an issue. They're using enough electricity to make a difference in the reliability of the grid that keeps these lights on. And it's also expensive for them. So that's an issue with the mining operations. It's a disadvantage. Now, Bitcoin and any other cryptocurrency, the government wants to be able to tax that just like anything else. It's kind of hard to do, but they want to treat it just like stocks, bonds, or other capital assets. If you get it and then sell it and you make a gain, you're going to either pay regular income or capital gains tax, just as usual. But the important differences are there's nobody that reports that to the IRS except you. You, in my example, if I send Bob $100, I am required to tell the IRS that I did that. And then Bob is supposed to be required to acknowledge that and pay taxes when he sells it. And that's all, you know, maybe you do it and maybe you don't. Now, the IRS is trying real hard to track all those transactions. They're looking at all these blockchains and they're trying to figure it out. But they don't know who you are individually. You are anonymous, so they might not even be able to find you. And that's the little thing here. The tax man is going after the guy with the Bitcoin who's running away from him. He doesn't want the tax man to know he's got one. So that's another issue. Now, there are 4 kinds of cryptocurrencies. They all work with this blockchains. They work a little differently, but they all use blockchains. The first type is called a payment cryptocurrency, and that's Bitcoin. It's a payment cryptocurrency. There are other kinds that are called tokens. They work a little differently. They still use blockchains. They have to be validated by mining in this case. And there's a couple of names of some of them that you can go buy if you want. And then there's these things called meme coins that we're going to talk about in a minute. That's a little different form, but it's also a token. There are things called stable coins that don't have as much price volatility. I'll mention those in a minute. And Tether is an example of a stable coin that exists today that you can buy if you want to have one of those. And then the fourth kind is what's called central bank digital currencies. That's where the government does in fact get involved, and we'll look at that in a minute. But it's where the government, if it ever develops that way, the government would be in charge of moving cryptocurrencies around. And there are examples of governments that are looking at that. And as I'll mention in a minute, Sweden is probably the most advanced country. They're running pilot programs. They don't have it completely developed and in progress yet, but they're working towards it. And it's called e-krona. Krona is their name for their dollar bill, for their currency. So they're working on an e-krona, which is a cryptocurrency, digital currency. There's more than 9,000 of these things out there, and they're growing every day. Okay, here's a little bit more about Bitcoin. By the way, a lot of people think this stuff is pretty cool. In Switzerland, you can see a statue to this anonymous person, Satoshi Nakamoto. That's his pseudonym. The person who invented Bitcoin, he's revered in different places around the world because he did that. He is the largest Bitcoin owner. He's got 1.1 billion Bitcoins, and that is worth $100 billion today. So whoever is that person has $100 billion worth of Bitcoins. He's never sold a single one. He's had them for 15 years. You can look at his wallet and see that big number, but you don't know who he or she is. They're out there somewhere. Some people think he lost his private key. I mean, why would you have $100 million and not spend at least $1 million? But he has not done that yet. Now, this is a big deal financially. Bitcoin market cap today is $1.6 trillion, and it's growing rapidly. There is a maximum amount of Bitcoins that can ever exist, and the number is 21 million. That's the most Bitcoins that can ever exist. And right now, we have 19.8 million of them that have been developed and are in circulation. So there's only, what, less than 2 left. And this halving business that I mentioned reduces the amount of new ones that can ever be issued. And somebody's figured all this out, and they think that it's going to take until 2140 to finally mine the remaining 1.2 Bitcoins because of that halving process. Here's the price history of Bitcoin. Boy, I wish I'd have bought it back then. You probably do too. And so it goes up and it goes down. It goes up and it goes down, so on and so forth. It's been back up. This is November. It was at, what, $77,000 in November. It went up to about 120 a month or so ago. Now it's back down to 86. So it goes up and down all the time. It's been mostly up, but you need to recognize that it can go down as well. So will it always rise? There are three answers to that question. Maybe so, maybe not, and it depends. So if that's what you came here to hear, there's your answer. This halving process is the reason that some people say it's always going to go up. Because as you know in economics, if you reduce the supply and the demand is the same, the price goes up. And so that's the reason that people say the price is always going to go up, because they are reducing the supply with this halving process. But that's not the only thing that affects the price of Bitcoin. It's also affected just by investment sentiment. What did you see in the news today? How does that make you feel about the price of Bitcoin? What about competing cryptocurrencies? Is there a better one over here that's better to buy than the one you've bought? Maybe you should buy that one. I mentioned the cost of mining is high. That's a deterrent to Bitcoin prices going up. I mentioned we have no idea what the regulations are going to be. When they finally come out, that may or may not be conducive to rising prices. We don't know yet. All of these things affect the price of Bitcoins. And so FOMO, the fear of missing out, you might have a fear of missing out. You might say, gee whiz, I sure wish I'd have bought something back then. By the way, I forgot to mention earlier that, maybe it's on the next chart, never mind, I'll get to it. So if you're afraid of missing out, there's one thing that you have to decide on to decide whether or not you should buy. And that thing you have to figure out is, do you believe there's really a greater fool next in line who's going to buy the Bitcoin at a higher price than you paid for it? If you think the answer to that's yes, maybe you should consider buying some. Maybe that fool is there, but then maybe he's not. So here's Bitcoin mining in Texas. Now, all these miners, or a lot of them, started off in China. And China in 2021 says, no more. We're using all of our electricity. We got better things to do with our electricity. Bitcoin mining is illegal in China. So all the miners had to go someplace else. A lot of them came to Texas because we have cheap electricity. And there are the 5 largest Bitcoin miners in Texas today. 2 of them are in Rockdale. Riot is the biggest, and BitDeer is another one. They're located on the site of the former Alcoa aluminum plant. Alcoa used to make tons of aluminum in Rockdale. That takes a lot of electricity, so all of the infrastructure for bringing in electricity was already in place. And so Riot, this is Riot here, and this is BitDeer. They went to Rockdale, and they just built a bunch of big buildings and filled them up with computers, and they're mining Bitcoins as we speak today. And there's just an example of how much electricity they're using to do that. You say, why Rockdale? Well, I mentioned Alcoa, that's one of the reasons. The other reason is I got a really sweetheart deal with TXU. They're buying their electricity for 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour until 2030. And if you own a home in Rockdale, you're paying 16 cents for it. So they got a sweetheart deal with electricity. And that's why those big buildings are all full of computers mining Bitcoins. Successfully mining a Bitcoin is not the only way they make money. Because they are large users of electricity, they can offer to shut down when there's a shortage of electricity. So if our grid is getting tight and there's a threat that the lights might go out, Riot will raise its hands and say, I'm willing to quit mining Bitcoins if you'll pay me for it. And ERCOT has said, you bet we will. And if you all remember, in 2021, we had that huge winter storm Uri, everybody remembers that. 3 days we were out of electricity. That was going on back then. Riot made $125 million during Uri. We couldn't pay it all. We paid them, I think, $36 million, and we're paying them the rest of that over time. But they made $125 million off of Uri just by shutting down and providing that electricity to everybody else. That's been going on, still is going on, not to the same scale. There's the number of millions of dollars that Riot has got for those last years. Last year, we paid them $34 million to shut down. This was in August when we got a little tight on our supply, and they had to shut down. A CEO of a Bitcoin mining company 2 years ago was very honest, and he made a public statement, and he said, we're an energy arbitrage operation disguised as a Bitcoin mining company. And that's at least in part what they are. They make money Bitcoin mining, but they're an energy arbitrage operation. They'll shut down when they can make money doing so. Now they want you to feel good about what they're doing, and so they got a big PR program. I found this ad. There's a nice looking miner. He's got a hat on, he's smiling, and he's holding up some Bitcoins. He's showing you that I'm a miner and I'm good. And he made this claim: Bitcoin miners saved Texas $18 billion by avoiding a new gas peaker and stabilizing the grid. Now, you can make a claim and say anything you want to. They made a claim. Some people might even believe it. I do not. But at any rate, they'd like for you to think that that's a good deal. And maybe it is. I don't know. You can make up your own opinion. Now, here is an example of why you have to be really careful with your private key. There is a man who lives in Wales in the UK, and he was an early on Bitcoin miner back in 2007, 2009, and he was quite successful, and he made 7,500 Bitcoins mining back in 2009. He put this private key in one of these USB drives. It got in the trash, and it went to the city dump. And he knew what happened to it, but it's in the city dump. This is a true story. He has been after the city to let him go look through that dump for 10 years. They keep saying, no, you can't do that. Just a month ago, he offered $13 million to buy the dump from the city. He wants to go look at every little thing and find his key, his USB drive, because it's got $800 million in it. Wow. And unless he finds that, he's lost his $800 million. Don't lose your key if you own Bitcoins. Now, here's another kind of a cryptocurrency. It's not Bitcoin now. It's called meme coins. And there's a bunch of them, and it's just based on popular culture. Think of your grandkids again, if you will. I mean, they're into this social media stuff, and it's really rapid, and anybody can invent a meme coin, and if you get people interested in it, think it's really cool, they might buy some. Or you can view it as a collector's item if you like. You can buy one and say, well, I've got a collector's item. The popularity can rise within minutes, and at least the price can go way up in a very short period of time. And just like anything else, that price can be very, very volatile. It can go up and down. There have been billions of meme coins created by individuals. It's easy to do. Any one of us could do it if we chose to. All you have to do is go on to this app called pump.fun and download the app for free on your phone, and you can create a meme coin and put it out there and see if anybody will buy it. Some do. They don't all work. Here's one that flopped. There's a woman, there she is, named Haley Welch, and she's really popular on TikTok and some of the stuff that the kids watch. And so she developed her own meme coin, and she called it Hawk Tua. And she put it out there, and the price went up, and she did something they call a rug pull or a pump and dump. And that means I'm going to send it out there, and after I got you hooked, I'm going to jerk the rug out, and you're stuck with it. That's a rug pull or a pump and dump. And so she did that right away, and the price went way down, and it's worthless today. So if you were one of those people that bought here, you've lost everything. So that meme coin flopped. Now there's another really interesting one that happened last November. There's a 15-year-old kid in California that was, just sitting in his room one night. And he says, I'm going to invent a meme coin. And he did. And he named it Gen Z Quant. And he used that pump.fun app on his phone. And he created this meme coin at 7:48 in the evening of November the 19th. And he put it out there, and all over the world, kids on their phone are looking at us. This is a kid in California, and he's got GenZ.quant. Isn't that cool? Maybe I can buy one. Maybe it'll be so. But people started buying and buying them, and the price went way up. He, by the way, kept 51 million of them for himself. They were worth $350 at the time. Released the rest of these, and he live streams himself on pump.fun so everybody can watch him hype up his Bitcoin, and it worked. A bunch of them got sold. 8 minutes later, he did a soft rug pull, and he cashed out, and he made $30,000 in 8 minutes. And later on that night, he did it 2 more times and made another $50,000. So this kid, this is a true story, this kid made $80,000 in one evening with 3 meme coins. Now the people who bought those meme coins and lost all that money were not very happy. And the internet just exploded with everybody raising Cain about this kid. And they posted his parents' picture on the internet, and they put the phone on him. Everybody was calling him. It was just a bad scene. The kid got a real kick out of it. And he went back on pump.fun, and he live streamed himself again. And here's what he told the rest of those people. That's him. I don't know his name. I know his last name, but it was illegal for him to give a kid's first name. But anyway, there he is. He's telling you I got you. And he did for $80,000. Okay. Here's another story that's really close to home. This is a Bitcoin story, and it's true. There's a guy, and his name is Ross Ulbricht, graduated from Westlake High School, smart kid apparently. Went to college, he got a science degree, he's got an advanced degree, and he created a online marketplace using Bitcoin. And he named it Silk Road. And it's an anonymous marketplace. And it's on the so-called dark web, where it's all hidden and you can't see it. And people all around the world used it to buy and sell illegal drugs. And it lasted for almost 3 years. He apparently did not trade in the drugs, but he made this computer program, if you want to think about it that way, available so that other people could deal in illegal drugs. And a lot of them did. He ended up getting caught. He made a ton of money. He was arrested. He's been in jail for 10 years, and just got pardoned. He had about $2 billion worth of Bitcoins, and the U.S. government seized that as a penalty for what he did. So the U.S. government owns his Bitcoins. Some people think he's still got 430 of them left. I don't think anybody knows that for sure, but if he did, he's still worth $500 million. So that's a local story, and it shows you how Bitcoin can be used in a manner that I think we would all not agree is good. Now, Bitcoins can be hacked, and it just happened a month ago. There's an operator called Bybit. They're out of Dubai. They're a cryptocurrency exchange outfit. And a month ago, some North Koreans, they know what the name of the group was, they successfully hacked Bybit, and they stole $1.5 billion of the Ethereum tokens. And that, what's his name, Kim Jong-un, or the head of North Korea, now has $1.5 billion that he can use for whatever he wants to do, thanks for his people hacking Bybit. So these things can be hacked, and it happened. So here's who owns Bitcoin. 70% of it is owned by individuals. Some businesses own some. Governments own about 2% of them. Over here is old Satoshi's. He's got like 5% of them that he owns. Again, he owns them, but he hasn't sold any. And there's the ones that haven't been mined yet. That's that, what was it, 1.2 million that haven't been mined. And then we think that about 5% of them have been lost. That's that USB drive and that dumped in Wales. And so that's who owns Bitcoin. The United States government owns more than any other government does. We've got about $12 billion worth. And we just decided that amount of Bitcoins that we have confiscated from criminals is our new U.S. government Bitcoin reserve. So here's the other type of a Bitcoin. They're called stable coins. And are stable coins the answer? The answer to that question is maybe. They've got a lot better chance of being the answer than Bitcoin does. They're pegged to something that has value, to the U.S. dollar, for example. This outfit called, you can buy them today, you can buy them from Tether. They're the largest one around. And what they do is they say, okay, I'm going to sell you this stable coin, and I'm going to promise you that I've got as many reserves in dollars in a bank or other assets in the bank somewhere as I'm giving out in stable coins. And so I'm good for it. Now they said a couple of years ago, they said they had 48 tons of gold and $100 billion in T-bills and 8,200,000 Bitcoins. And they always say they've got enough to cover all of the tokens that are out there, but they've never allowed themselves to be audited. And so maybe they do or maybe they don't. So there's some questions with respect to this, but these conceivably could become something that's reasonable to do. See, what backs up stable coins? Well, the vast bulk of them, 99% of them are U.S. dollar. They're called fiat currencies, dollar, peso, a krona, or whatever. So currencies do most. You can also use gold, you can use Bitcoin, and you can use computer programs. But the vast majority of the stable coins that are out there now are backed up by Uncle Sam's dollar. They work on blockchains, just like the others did. But the way you approve a transaction is completely different. I talked about that proof of work for Bitcoins. when you have to solve that really hard problem and use all that electricity. That's nothing like you do with these stable coins. Here you have what's called proof of stake. And so the example of that is, let's say that I've got a wallet, and let's say that it's just full of stable coins. And you can see my wallet, you don't know who I am, but you can see that that wallet has got lots of stable coins in it. And so if somebody's gonna give Bob that $100, me with this wallet, I can step up and say, I'll take that transaction. I guarantee it's good. If it's not good, I'll make up any losses with all this money that I'm showing you I have. And so the transaction has been authorized, and I get that dollar, that reward. And so that's how you authorize a stable coin using proof of stake. And it's working today. But it is still a blockchain. It just doesn't involve that mining like I described for Bitcoin. Now, stable coins can fail. There was one of them called Terra in 2022. It wasn't based on a dollar. It was based on some other cryptocurrency that wasn't any good. And it failed within 24 hours. There's the price chart. Boom, it just failed. So people who owned it lost $200 billion and it's just gone. They shouldn't have bought it. Now, there was another one just a couple of years ago called USD coin, and it almost failed. It had its money, good money, in a real bank in Silicon Valley. The only problem is the bank failed. And because the bank failed, then the assets weren't there anymore. And so this was just about, you can see what happened with the price. It almost failed, but the government saved it. The government came in and bailed out the bank, and because they did that, the assets were still there. So it came back up, and USD coin is still in business today. They're the second largest stable coin. Here's this central bank digital currency. This is where a bank is now, or a government is now involved in a bank, and they conceptually, they will give out this digital currency, and it'll be on blockchains and everything else, and it'll become the transaction. And there are a number of countries, we're thinking about it, and there are a number of countries that are thinking about it like us. There are a few countries in dark brown here that are actually running pilot programs. Sweden is one of those countries. They are now, I think, at their third or fourth pilot program, so they're taking it by bits and pieces, seeing how it works. So far, they've been fairly successful. They're continuing to do more and more pilot programs. They have not yet said whether or not they're going to finally adopt it. We don't know, but they're thinking about it. And if you can get past some of these controversial aspects that we still haven't solved, this could be something that we'll all see one day. I say could be because we don't know yet, but it's got a decent possibility of it. There are still issues. The stability of it, who controls it, how secure is it private or not private? All these are big questions. If we got there, one of the big things is that, you know, right now, if a bank fails, the bank is responsible for the failure. If you go to this central bank digital currency, it's no longer the banks that are liable. The liable shifts to the Federal Reserve. I guess banks would like that. I'm not a banker. But at any rate, this is something that you might watch as it just evolves. I don't know how long it's going to take, probably a few years until they get it worked out. But this could be something where we will not too long from now, be using cryptocurrencies. It remains to be seen. Okay, what's going on? Huge uncertainty is all around. There is no good regulatory framework. There needs to be one. Some states, including Texas, have got really limited regulations. It's not much, but there's a little bit that we've tried to do in Texas and other states have. it's a turf issue in the federal government. Will the SEC regulate it, or will the Federal Trade Commission regulate it? They're fighting internally over who's going to regulate it. They both agree that somebody has to, but that hasn't been decided yet. A couple of years ago, there were bills introduced in both the Senate and the House to provide some regulations. They didn't make it. They stalled and died. Nothing happened. Earlier this year, there's been a study group formed to look at the aspects of it, just to decide what should this country do. They're supposed to give a report in July. I have no idea what that's going to be, but I'm sure if you're watching the news, when we get to July, there will be some news about whatever the study group comes up with. And the Senate, just a week or two ago, came out with a proposed bill. I hadn't passed yet, but it's a proposal that would bring some regulations to stable coins. So there is regulatory activity that's underway, and it's anybody's guess as to whether that's going to develop. So there's the story of Bitcoin, and that's all, folks. So now we've got a little time. Let's see. Let's start, Jack. I see your hand up.
What is it that limits the number to 21 million?
That's a limit that was built into the system. Satoshi built that in to begin with, and supposedly it can't be changed. You can decide you believe that or not. That's what he said. Yes, ma'am. Next to you.
How do you buy your first Bitcoin? With dollars?
I've never. You use dollars. I don't know that. You can buy them. I've never bought one. You can use dollars. They probably take stock. I bet you they'll take anything you want. There are these cryptocurrencies. You can even, I'm told, I read all this, I don't know if it's true. I'm told that there are ATM machines that you can go to and cash in your Bitcoins for a $10 bill. So they say. Nancy.
Jim?
No, just say, Nancy.
That crypto was dependent upon a stable source of energy.
The question is cryptocurrency depending on a stable source of energy?
The reason I'm saying that, you were talking about Texas and ERCOT has got, is obligated to certain entities, and they would only be able to take what the entities did not need. Is that a stable source of energy?
The question is a stable source of energy that you use for mining? It kind of depends. It's there now. Right now it's happening, so they're using it. The question is what happens when they get short and maybe they can shut down. So the answer is we don't know whether it's stable or not. Roger's got a question.
Jim, I almost want to ask you how is a Bitcoin like God, but I'm not going to go there. I have a different one. We were just in Sweden. You cannot use cash. You cannot use krona. The American banks will not buy your krona back. You use only credit cards, numbers on a paper. So Sweden's gone off cash. And my question is, how do you build a stable economy on this kind of value system, and what is the value system?
Is Lee Price in the audience? I have no clue. It's important, and you're right, Sweden has done away with cash. That's why they are probably ahead of anybody else in looking at this digital currency. They would love for that to work. That would be good for them. Now, they haven't decided it's going to or not, but that's why they're doing that. Those are big questions that we don't know the answer to. Sure.
On the South Korean taking the $1.5 billion.
North Korea.
North Korea. They talked about a hot wallet and a cold wallet. Can you explain that to me?
No,
I couldn't explain it to myself.
There's a whole lot down there that I can't explain to you.
Thanks, sir.
Well, I'm not gonna tell you to go buy any, but I've got a free one for you here. I'll pick it up on your way out.
Jim, can you go back to the first slide?
Take two.
He studied it, he doesn't know any of that.